Every summer, I go camping with my cousins at Useed National Park, deep in the heart of Oregon. It's a tradition we've kept for years. Every trip, we always spend one night stargazing, not far from the campsites. There's this small, charming village. It has a few markets, restaurants, and an old gas station that closes way before dark. Right across the road from that village is a massive open field, covered in tall, swaying grass. A narrow wooden boardwalk winds straight into it, like a pier stretching out into a sea of grass, except, instead of water, it's surrounded by dark, towering trees that seem to swallow up the sky. That boardwalk, that's where we always sit to watch the stars. But that night, something felt off. The sky was completely overcast. No stars, no moon, just a blanket of heavy clouds. Still, we went out there like we always did, sitting at the very end of the boardwalk, surrounded by nothing but the rustling grass and the black silhouette of the forest. We sat there for a while, just talking, joking around, trying to ignore how dark it really was. Then my cousin, Ethan, suddenly leaned forward. "Hey, what is that?" he asked, pointing toward the woods. Out in the distance, far past the edge of the grass field, there was a light. A small, bright, unmoving light, deep within the trees. At first, I thought maybe it was just someone with a flashlight. But Ethan shook his head. "There's nothing out that way," he said. "No campsites, no trails, nothing." He was right. That part of the woods was completely undeveloped, off limits. There shouldn't be anyone out there, especially not this late. We stood up, curiosity mixing with this uncomfortable crawling feeling in the pit of my stomach. The three of us, Ethan, Lucas, and I, started walking further down the boardwalk, trying to get a better look. As we moved closer, the light didn't flicker, didn't sway. It just stayed perfectly still, like it was waiting. The closer we got, the more wrong it felt. And that's when something else caught my attention. Just beyond the glow, something moved. Something tall. Something way too tall to be a person. As we kept walking, we noticed something strange. The light wasn't steady. It was twinkling, flickering, almost like it was coming from a flame. That made no sense. Everyone knows the rules in national parks. Fires are only allowed in designated fire pits, nowhere else, especially not out there. In the middle of the open woods, far from any campsite. Ethan frowned. "I swear there's nothing out there," he said. "No trails, no cabins, nothing but empty woods." And he was right. We had camped here for years. That part of the forest was deep, isolated, and completely off limits. What was even stranger, no matter how far we walked along the boardwalk, the flame didn't seem to get any closer. It stayed the same size, the same distance, like it was moving away from us. Or maybe it wasn't real at all. We were about to turn back when we heard it. Voices. It sounded like a crowd, dozens of people, laughing, shouting, talking, all at once. At first I thought it was a party. Maybe some reckless group had wandered deep into the woods, but then the noise changed. The laughter melted into something else, something darker. It turned into chanting, not words. Just this strange, rhythmic whooping, then howling. But it wasn't animal howling. No. It sounded like humans. Pretending to howl. Dozens of voices, all groaning, wailing, in perfect, eerie harmony. Then the pitch shifted. The noises became guttural, low, raspy. Like whoever was making those sounds was choking, or in pain. It didn't sound like a party anymore. It sounded like a ritual, a gathering of people doing something they weren't supposed to be doing. Something that made the air feel heavier. The grass around us even seemed quieter, as if the field itself was holding its breath. We froze. The three of us stood there, barely breathing, staring toward that flickering flame, while the sounds of agony and madness echoed through the trees. My heart was hammering in my chest. I didn't know if we should run or hide. And then, from somewhere beyond the flame, something moved. Something heavy. Something big. The sound of branches cracking under its weight. Slow, deliberate footsteps. Headed toward the boardwalk. I hadn't even realized it until that moment, but I was the only one standing near the very end of the boardwalk. When I turned around, my heart nearly dropped. All my cousins Ethan, Lucas, and Mason had already retreated. They were huddled together way behind me, staring wide-eyed into the dark woods. Just like me. None of them dared to step closer. The sounds of wailing, distant but sharp, were still drifting from the trees. And nope, there was no way that was a party. Not even close. The air felt wrong. Heavy. The kind of wrong that makes your skin itch and your stomach twist. Eventually, the light faded. Sounds stopped. We backed away. Quiet, shaken. Nobody said a word as we hurried back to camp. But the next day, curiosity got the better of us. Despite every instinct telling us not to, we decided to go look. In daylight, we hiked toward the general direction where we saw that flickering flame. There were no trails, just raw, wild forest, and sure enough, it was nothing but empty woods. Acres of pine, dirt, fallen branches. No signs of a camp, no cabins, nothing except one thing. A large, flattened patch of dirt. The pine needles had been swept away, and the soil underneath was covered in footprints. Dozens of them, bare footprints. Some were small, others were huge, all pressed deep into the mud. Like people had been stomping, dancing, or worse, there were no tire tracks, no boot prints, just those bare human feet, circling, gathering. I don't know what exactly we witnessed that night, but I'm almost certain it was a cult, a real one, and the fact that something like that even exists, right there, in the middle of a national park, still sends chills down my spine. A part of me still wonders what kind of cult it was, and I'll be honest. Deep down, I sometimes wish we'd gone closer, just to know, even though I know that could have been the last mistake we ever made. When I was 19, I was living with my mom, her boyfriend, and my boyfriend in a tiny desert town, right on the edge of Joshua Tree National Park in Southern California. Our backyard wasn't just desert, it was protected national park land that stretched on for miles. There were plenty of houses scattered around, but for some reason, our road was the only one that wasn't paved. No sidewalks, no streetlights at night. The only light came from the stars. It was great for stargazing, but honestly, it made everything else feel unsettling. Once the sun went down, the desert became a black void. You couldn't see anything beyond the edge of the porch. This all started in February, when desert nights get bitterly cold. Sometimes, it even snows out there. The first thing that happened was the noises. Late at night, right outside my bedroom window, I kept hearing footsteps. Soft at first, then heavier, pacing, moving. Then, one night, I heard something else. A cell phone, rington. It rang just once, somewhere out there in the bushes, and then it stopped. It chilled me to the bone. I told my boyfriend. He didn't really believe me at first, but then, one night, he was looking out the window when he swore he saw someone, a shadow, a figure, running away from the house. For about a week it kept happening. Off and on, the adults blamed it on desert animals, or the wind rustling the bushes. But deep down, I knew it wasn't animals. It felt intentional. Then, things escalated. One night, my boyfriend and I were sitting on the back porch, just having a smoke, laughing, talking. And then, a small rock suddenly flew out from the pitch-black desert beyond our yard. It smacked the ground just a few feet from us. We both froze. We stared out into the dark, but there was nothing, just blackness, silent. Still, we glanced at each other, both startled. Both spooked, and started heading toward the back door, just as my boyfriend opened it. Wham! A second rock, way bigger, the size of a golf ball, came hurling out of the dark. It hit the wooden siding of the house with a loud, sickening crack. This wasn't the wind. This wasn't animals. Someone was out there. Someone ... watching us. Out of nowhere, one of the rocks came flying straight toward us. It hit my boyfriend square in the head. It bounced off him, and then hit me. We both stumbled back, completely shaken. It wasn't playful. Whoever was out there was trying to hurt us. We ran back inside and immediately told my mom and her boyfriend what had just happened. As we were explaining, it got worse. More rocks smashing against the house, hitting the windows, thudding off the roof. For a few terrifying minutes, it sounded like the house was being pelted from every direction, and then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. We were shaken, but somehow we convinced ourselves it was over. We tried to move on with the evening, but none of us really believed it. The next night, right around 10 p.m., it started again. The rocks out of the darkness, thump, crack, bang. We were done being scared. My boyfriend and my mom's boyfriend decided they were going to go out into the desert and find out exactly who was messing with us, maybe even teach them a lesson. They grabbed flashlights and weapons. My mom's boyfriend was a martial arts guy. He had all kinds of gear, nunchucks, batons, even a bow staff. Weird for a desert town, but that's who he was. And of course, they brought Bear. Bear was my dog, a massive German Shepherd Wolf mix. Easily over 100 pounds. Muscle, teeth, and pure fearlessness. I had seen Bear chase off packs of wild coyotes without even breaking a sweat. Nothing scared him, or so I thought. The guys headed out into the desert, disappearing into the blackness beyond the house, flashlights bouncing in the distance, weapons in hand, Bear leading the way. 30 minutes passed. I stayed inside, trying to distract myself with a video game, but my ears were tuned to every sound outside. Then bang. A loud crash right at the front door, and then a sharp, painful-sounding yelp. My stomach dropped. I jumped up and ran to the door, and what I saw still haunts me to this day. Underneath the bottom crack of the door, I could see a paw, Bear's paw, on my side of the door, which meant he had slammed into it hard. I flung the door open, and there was Bear, my big, fearless wolf dog. The same dog who had fought off wild animals without flinching, was shaking. He had peed himself. His tail was tucked between his legs, his ears pinned back. He bolted inside, head down, trembling, and dove straight under the kitchen table. I had never, ever seen him like that. Whatever was out there, whatever Bear had seen in that desert, it was something no animal should ever have to face, something I'll never forget, and truthfully, I don't think I ever want to know. That night, the guys came back from the desert, frustrated and empty-handed. Nothing, no footprints, no shadows, no signs of anyone, or anything. But the second they stepped back inside, the rocks started again. Thud, crack, bang, hitting the walls, smacking the roof, rolling across the gravel. That's when we finally decided to call the cops. When they arrived, they scanned the area with their flashlights, walked around for a few minutes, and then gave us the most useless explanation I've ever heard. Probably just some drunk messing around out here, one officer said, scribbling something on his clipboard. Then they left. Just left. The next couple of nights were more of the same. The guys would grab their weapons and head out into the desert, searching, hoping to catch someone, but they never found a single trace. No footprints, no movement, nothing. And whenever they were outside hunting, the rocks wouldn't come. But the moment they came back inside, the rocks would start again, over and over, for 2 or 3 more nights. By then we were tired, frustrated, scared, but also angry. So one night the guys decided to switch tactics. They grabbed a big jug of cheap wine, stacked their weapons by the front porch, and decided to just sit and wait. And as the wine flowed, so did the threats. They started yelling out into the black desert. At first it was just standard stuff. We see you, or come out, you coward. But as the night dragged on, and the wine started hitting harder, the threats got darker, twisted, disturbing, the kind of stuff you don't say unless you really want to scare someone, or unless you've had way too much to drink, and honestly, if someone really was out there hiding in the dark, I imagine by that point, they were scared too. But then, something happened. My mom called from work. She wanted to check in and talk to her boyfriend, so we stepped inside to grab the phone. He answered, and that's when it happened. From outside, I heard my boyfriend scream, a sharp panicked yell and the sound of him running, fast, his footsteps pounding against the dirt, coming straight toward the house. Something was wrong, badly wrong. My boyfriend came sprinting back toward the house, but not from the front porch, from deep in the desert. When he finally reached the porch light, I could see him limping, and when he got closer, I saw why. Cactus needles, dozens of them, sticking out of his legs. He was panting, out of breath, bleeding in little dots from where the needles jabbed into his skin. I chased someone, he gasped. Someone and all. Black, running through the desert. I swear, I almost caught them. Then I slipped straight into a cactus. After that night, the rocks stopped completely. It was just over. And to this day, I still don't know who or what was out there, or why they did it. Because seriously, who hides in the middle of the desert in the dead of winter for hours, across multiple nights, just to throw rocks? It's such an elaborate prank. If it even was a prank, whatever it was, it left a scar. Even now, over 10 years later, I still don't feel comfortable being out in the desert at night. There's just something about the silence, the blackness, the way the shadows move between the Joshua trees. It still feels wrong. 10 years later, my husband and I decided to go camping. It was our 10th anniversary, just the 2 of us. And of course, our dog. There's this big national park about an hour from where we live. A beautiful forest filled with lakes, ponds, hiking trails, and scattered campsites. It's pretty popular in the summer, but this was late September. The air was colder, the crowds were gone, the park felt emptier, quieter. We found a nice campsite tucked right next to a small lake, set up the tent, built a fire, watched the sky turn orange as the sun dropped below. The tree line. It was perfect. Too perfect. Before dark, we decided to take a hike. There was a long trail that wrapped around the lake, starting near our site. As we walked, we noticed there was another campsite directly across the lake. Could see it from where we stood, just a little clearing, a tent, and someone moving around. When we reached the other side, we passed right by that camp, and that's when we saw him. A man standing there alone, maybe in his late 20s, dressed in dark clothes, just staring at us. No smile, no wave. We greeted him, "Hey, how's it going?" But he didn't answer, didn't nod, didn't even blink, just stood there, silently watching. As we walked by, the guy looked about the same age as us, mid to late 20s. At first, I just figured, maybe he was shy, or just one of those quiet, weird, outdoorsy types. His camp didn't seem strange. Small tent, a tarp, and some gear scattered around. Looked like he'd been there a while, so we kept walking, didn't think much of it. By the time we got back to our camp, the sun had dipped below the trees. The forest was sinking into that pitch-black kind of darkness you only get out in the wild. We hurried to finish setting up the tent, then made some food by the fire. It was peaceful, quiet, the crackling of the fire, the occasional breeze through the pines. It should have felt relaxing, but then, it happened. Our dog, usually calm, suddenly lunged, barking, snarling, going absolutely crazy. She was tied to a long lead connected to a tree, but she was pulling hard enough that the metal stakes in the ground trembled. Both of us jumped up at first. We figured maybe she was just spooked by some animal, but then, we realized, she wasn't barking at nothing. There was something out there, and it was close by now. It had been dark for hours. You couldn't see 10 feet past the firelight. I grabbed the dog's leash, trying to calm her. My husband strapped on his headlamp and started scanning the woods. The beam cut through the darkness, jumping from tree to tree, but the dog wouldn't stop barking, growling, locked onto something. We kept thinking maybe a bear, maybe a moose, something big, but that didn't make sense. If it were an animal, why wasn't it running away from the noise, from the fire, from us? My husband stepped forward, toward the start of the trail that led to the other campsite, the one where that strange guy was earlier. The path was less than 30 feet from our tent. Just as he reached the edge, he stopped. His headlamp froze. On something lying on the ground. I caught up, dragging the dog behind me. "What is it?" I asked. He turned slowly, his face pale. "It's a person lying on the ground." My stomach dropped. I expected the worst. Someone hurt, dead maybe. Someone passed out, injured, face down in the dirt. We called out, "Hey, are you okay? Do you need help?" At first, nothing. They didn't move, just lying there, face down, arms stiff by their sides. Then they stood up fast. No groaning, no stumbling, just straight from the ground up on 2 feet. And as soon as the headlamp caught his face, it was the guy, the same guy from the other campsite. Except now, his face wasn't blank, it was twisted, pale, terrified. He threw his hands up. "Don't let the dog near me. Keep it away," he yelled, backing up for a split second. I felt relieved. At least it wasn't a bear, or something worse. Something that would eat us. But then I realized something. A bear might have actually been the safer option. Honestly, a bear would have been less terrifying than this guy. After standing up from the dirt, he walked straight over to our campfire, and just sat down, no asking, no explanation. My husband tried to keep it light. "Hey man, what were you doing sneaking around out there, with no flashlight?" No answer, not even a shrug. We even chuckled nervously, trying to break the tension. "Dude, we thought you were a bear or something out in the woods." But he didn't laugh. He didn't even smile. He just sat there, staring into the fire, his jaw clenched, his eyes narrowed. He looked annoyed. That's when I noticed it. His right pant leg was soaking wet, like he had slipped off the path and stepped into the lake. But he didn't seem to care. Didn't even mention it. And the entire time he sat there, he kept glancing around. Not at us, at our dog, always checking where she was. And then something else caught my eye. He had a knife. It was hanging from his belt, partially hidden by his jacket. Now, yeah, people carry knives when camping. Not that weird, right? Except the way he kept fiddling with it, or worse, every couple of minutes. He'd slide his hand into his jacket pocket, not like reaching for something, more like checking, feeling, confirming something was still there. It reminded me of how someone might check their phone without pulling it out, but it wasn't a phone. It didn't feel like a phone. The tension was unbearable. He sat with us for nearly 30 minutes, saying almost nothing, ignoring questions, avoiding eye contact. The only words he mumbled were vague. Stuff about heading back to his camp. No explanation, no apology, no "Hey, sorry, I scared you guys sneaking through the woods." Just stood up, mumbled, and left. But the way he moved, I knew he hadn't meant to be seen. We only caught him because the dog went ballistic. As soon as he disappeared into the woods, I turned to my husband and whispered, "There is no way I'm sleeping in that tent tonight." Without hesitation, he nodded. "Yeah, no, he could come back. And if he does, it won't be good." Neither of us said the words out loud, but we both knew what we meant. We needed to leave. Immediately, my husband started throwing everything back into the car. Forget packing it right, just shove it in. I stood with the dog, scanning the tree line with the flashlight, watching, listening, waiting. In case he came back, we were nearly done. Just tossing the last of our gear into the car when a flash, a quick, sharp flicker of light, coming from the trail that led straight from his camp. 2 hours he was coming back, maybe he thought. We were asleep. Our fire was out, after all. From his side of the lake, it probably looked like our camp was silent. Dark, vulnerable. But we weren't asleep. We saw him, and yeah, we didn't wait to see what his plan was. We jumped into the car, slammed the doors, locked everything, left. Fast. I don't know. Maybe we overreacted. But deep down, I don't think we did. Because seriously, who crawls through the wet, freezing woods in the middle of the night, with no flashlight, just to visit strangers? Nope. I am so glad we had our dog with us that night. If it weren't for her, I don't know how that would have ended. That trip taught me something important, something I will never forget. Out there in the wilderness, miles from the nearest town, people are the scariest thing you can run into at night. A few years after that, my partner and I decided to take another trip, this time to California. We wanted to visit some of the lesser-known state parks, ghost towns, and weird, forgotten places that tourists usually skip. For the first leg of the trip, everything was perfect. We camped in our car, explored creepy ghost towns, drove along scenic highways that felt like time forgot them. I loved it. But after about a week and a half on the road, it was time to start heading home to Oregon. Still, instead of taking the boring freeway, we figured why not take the scenic route? One last adventure. That decision took us right through Death Valley National Park. We had seen a photo online of a hidden waterfall there, supposedly a short, easy hike. A strange idea, right? A waterfall in Death Valley. So we went for it. We found the trail easily enough and started the mile-long hike toward the falls. But the deeper we walked, the stranger it felt. Now, Death Valley is always creepy. It's a place where everything is dead silent, where the landscape feels like the earth itself has been forgotten. But this trail, this was different. It felt sinister. I couldn't shake it, that feeling of being watched. And the weirdest part, I couldn't hear anyone, not a soul, no footsteps, no distant voices, nothing, just us and the desert, staring back even though I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. I couldn't shake the feeling. There were no cars at the trailhead when we arrived, not one. Logically, we should have been alone, but it didn't feel that way. It felt like something was out there, watching. That tight knot of dread stayed with me the entire hike. Even when we reached the waterfall, this stunning surreal sight in the middle of Death Valley, couldn't relax. We took a few photos, sat for maybe 5 minutes, and then I said, let's go. I didn't care how pretty it was. Something felt wrong the entire walk back. My head was on a swivel, heart pounding. I kept glancing behind us, scanning the cliffs, the bushes, the path ahead. Nothing, but it didn't matter. The feeling was real. It was heavy, smothering. I picked up my pace. My partner noticed but didn't question it. They felt it too. We made it back to the trailhead without anything happening. At first, as we started, tossing our hiking poles and water bottles into the back seat, I noticed it. A black SUV, limo tinted windows, engine off, completely silent, parked right next to us. When we left, there were no cars here. None. But now, this SUV, window so dark you couldn't see inside. No driver, no one standing nearby, no one sitting in the front seat, just the SUV. Silent, still watching. I scanned the area, looked back toward the trail. The problem was, this wasn't a loop trail, it was an out-and-back trail, with cliffs on one side, and heavy, tangled undergrowth on the other. If someone was on that trail, we would have seen them. There was nowhere else to go, and if they'd come off, they would have had to crash through thick bushes, loud, obvious, impossible to miss. But we hadn't heard a thing. Not a branch, not a step, not a single sound. Then I saw him, out of the corner of my eye. A man, a huge man, emerging from the bushes near the trail. When I say huge, I mean easily 6'4" built. Solid, and completely silent. Dead silent. Not a twig snapped. Not a leaf, rustlad. 1 second, there was nothing. The next, he was just there. He stepped fully out of the bushes, and the sight of him made my stomach drop. Massive. Built like a linebacker, at least 6'4". Broad shoulders, thick arms. Tattoos crawled across both arms, the kind that didn't look decorative, but the kind you associate with prison. He wore a baseball cap pulled low over a pair of dark sunglasses. A long, scraggly beard covered most of his face, slung across his back. Was a rifle, a real one, and on his hip, a large hunting knife. His hands gripped something, a cell phone, and then he waved, not casual, not friendly, more like beckoning. My entire body locked up. My brain screamed the same thing over and over. Gun. He has a gun. Distance means nothing. If he wants to, this could end right now. I couldn't breathe. He called out, hey, I found this phone back by the waterfall. Didn't want y'all to leave without it. His voice was deep, calm, measured. My partner and I both instinctively patted our pockets. Both of us had our phones right there in our hands. There was no missing phone, no way. And in that exact moment, we both knew this was a setup, a robbery, maybe, or something worse, way worse. We didn't hesitate. We jumped into the car, slammed the doors, locked everything, fired up the engine, kicked the dirt road into clouds of dust. The guy didn't run after us, didn't shout. He just stood there, motionless, staring at us, watching. I looked back through the rear window as we sped away, and he never moved, just stood there, sunglasses catching the sunlight, rifle slung on his back like a predator, watching something it decided not to eat. And the worst part, he had been out there the entire time we were hiking. And we had no idea. Didn't hear him, didn't see him, didn't even sense him, until he decided to let us. I still think about that. Think about what could have happened if we'd walked over, taken the bait, or if he'd decided to do something different. It changed how I feel about hiking in remote places. Because nature is scary sometimes, but people are scarier. There was this lodge, a place my girlfriend and I had loved for years, tucked near the southern tip of Kruger National Park in South Africa. It was beautiful and isolated. Game farm with tented chalets spread far apart, deep in the bush, private, quiet, peaceful. You couldn't even see the next chalet over. You could only hear your neighbors if they were being really loud. But it had fallen on hard times. The weekend this happened, only 2 of the 25 chalets were occupied on Friday. By Saturday night, we were the only ones left, completely alone. Already made me feel uneasy. And then, Saturday morning, the manager stopped by. Said, hey, just so you know, I'm heading out for the weekend. If you need anything, help yourself to the fridges in the restaurant. Just leave a note. We'll settle the bill next week. No staff, no security, no guests. Just us. At first it sounded kind of nice. We'd have the pool, the jacuzzi, the entire place to ourselves. After he left, we headed into the park for most of the day. But when we pulled back in around 3 p.m., I felt it. A wave of dread, goosebumps, even though it was over 100 degrees. And then, I saw it. Footprints. Large boot prints. Fresh. Stepping over the prints my girlfriend and I had made that morning. And then turning back the way they came. Someone had been here. At our chalet. While we were gone, everything looked untouched inside. No damage, nothing missing. But the prints were real, and they didn't belong to us. We tried to shake it off, went for a swim, took a game drive around the farm, but we were quiet, both of us. Quiet in that way where your gut is screaming, but you don't want to say it out loud. By the time we sat down for dinner, around 8 p.m., the silence was suffocating. I looked across the table and saw the fear written all over her face. "We need to leave," she whispered. "Now. Not after dinner, not later. Right now." I didn't argue, didn't question it. We threw the food into the cooler, grabbed our bags, didn't pack, shoved, tossed the keys into the box at the gate, and left. As we drove down the gravel road, heading back toward the highway, that suffocating feeling started to lift. We made the almost 100-mile drive home in the dark, crawled into our own bed, and finally started to breathe again. The next day, 4 p.m. My phone rang. It was the lodge manager. Panicked, frantic. "Are you two okay?" he asked immediately. I told him yes, we were safe. "We left last night." Then, his voice dropped. Thank God you did." And then, he told me why. Right after we left, the lodge was hit. Broken into, ransacked. A group of 5 men, armed. They took everything of value. What they couldn't carry, they smashed. But there's more. They only broke into one chalet, the one we had been staying in. Ours. The one we would have been sleeping in, had we not left. The boot prints. That wasn't random, it was someone watching us, keeping tabs. The lodge had security cameras, but only around the central building, not at the chalets. The footage showed the first movement. At just before 8:30 p.m., we left the chalet around 8:10. Hit the road by 8:20, they arrived. 5 to 10 minutes later, 5 men, at least one had a firearm, others carried machetes. Had we waited just 5 minutes longer? I don't even want to imagine. There was no staff, no other guests. No one for miles. And no cell service at the chalet. Only a weak signal back at the lodge. No one would have heard us. No one could have helped. That was the last time we ever visited that lodge. It didn't survive much longer. Went under, auctioned off, gone. To this day, we both swear we will never, ever ignore that gut feeling again. Because if we had, it probably would have cost us our lives.